On January 31st, 2026, over 1.3 to 1.5 million Kenyan households, they received a message. KOKO fuel dispensers would stop working immediately. Immediately, as in there was no transition plan or a wind down period. Just off. 3,000 bioethanol fuel ATMs across Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, and other cities, they all went dark. 700 direct employees lost their jobs. Thousands of shop agents and logistics workers, they were left exposed. And a company that had raised over $300 million, it was backed by Microsoft's Climate Innovation Fund, Mirova, Rand Merchant Bank, and even a $179.6 million World Bank mega political risk guarantee. Imagine even with all that, it collapsed almost instantly. Now don't kid yourself that this one was a small startup. It was one of Africa's biggest climate tech bets. So what actually happened? KOKO Networks was founded in 2014 in Nairobi by Greg Murray, who's an Australian national. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce from the University of New South Wales. He trained at KPMG in Australia as an accountant and a consultant before moving into emerging market strategy roles in the Middle East and Africa. Before KOKO, he co-founded Clean Star Ventures in 2007, which is a venture builder focused on clean energy projects in Africa, India, and Brazil. KOKO was a second-generation attempt at scaling biofuel-based clean cooking using carbon finance. The ideological framing was very clear from the start. Charcoal is a $30 billion informal industry in Africa. It drives deforestation. It also contributes to indoor air pollution, linked to hundreds of thousands of deaths annually. So instead of charity, Murray pitched market-driven climate correction. Use carbon markets to subsidize clean cooking for the urban poor. So you see, this is carbon finance, not like a charity or aid or helping out. That narrative itself, it attracted serious capital. From 2014 to 2018, KOKO developed its core system. Number 1, 300-liter IoT-enabled fuel ATMs. Number 2, real-time monitoring via KOKO Cloud. Number 3, usage tracking designed for carbon verification. Number 4, ethanol sourced from Kenyan molasses distilleries and imports. And number 5, stove manufacturing in India. The stove costs roughly $115 to manufacture, and the customers, they paid about $12 to $15. Now, I know you might be wondering about that difference. That difference, it was not something like charity. It was subsidized through expected carbon revenue. Now, the launch was on July 2019 in Nairobi. By the end of 2019, 550,000 households, they were using KOKO. By 2023, over 1.5 million users, they were using KOKO. KOKO had 3,000 ATMs nationwide. It also had presence in up to 10 cities. It had 700 to 1,800 employees who were depending on reporting period. And on top of that, it had 1,400 retail agents. Fuel logistics, they were handled through partnership with Vivo Energy. That's the Shell licensee in Kenya. By mid-2023, KOKO had spent over $300 million building infrastructure. It had become one of the largest urban clean cooking platforms in Africa. Now, KOKO was a carbon monetization company. Many of us will confuse it for a fuel margin company. But no, it was a carbon monetization company. Every household that shifted from charcoal to bioethanol, it reduced emissions and deforestation pressure. KOKO quantified that impact. Then, it generated carbon credits under recognized methodologies. They targeted compliance markets like CORSIA, the aviation sector offset markets, where credits can sell around $20 per ton, far above voluntary markets. At scale, KOKO projected up to 6 million tons of credits annually. If credits sold at high-value compliance pricing, the math worked. If they didn't, the subsidy engine stalled. This means viability was heavily dependent on carbon credit authorization and exports. And that's structural concentration at risk. In 2024, Kenya formalized carbon markets regulations under Article 6.2. Now, to export carbon credits internationally, companies required a letter of authorization, LOA. And LOAs came with conditions: 4% fee per credit, 25% revenue share to the state, and 50% allocation to a national climate fund. This materially changed revenue projections. KOKO, it had letters of no objection, but letters of authorization, the ones that unlock compliance market sales, those ones stalled. At the same time, import permits for molasses-based ethanol, those permits slowed. Public policy voices, they questioned carbon credit veracity, and globally, cookstove carbon methodologies, they faced scrutiny over overcrediting risks. Without letters of approval, KOKO could not access high-value compliance buyers. Revenue froze, infrastructure costs remained fixed, and debt obligations remained active. Now, on January 29th to 30th, 2026, there were emergency board meetings. On January 31st, Operations stopped, dispensers were deactivated, employees were terminated, customers, they were being notified via SMS. On February 1st, PwC administrators, Muniu Thoithi and George Weru, they were appointed. Now here's the bigger issue. In March 2025, KOKO secured a $179.6 million political risk guarantee from the World Bank's MIGA. That guarantee covered expropriation, it covered breach of contracts, and it covered transfer restrictions. If regulatory shifts are interpreted as breach, Kenya could face exposure exceeding 23 billion shillings. That is sovereign risk territory. At this point, it's not just a startup collapse. Now, I know we all ask, was it fraud? Was it policy? Or was it structural flaw? Some government insiders questioned transparency of carbon calculations. Globally, cases like the 2025 Sequest indictment in the United States, those cases intensified scrutiny around cookstove carbon claims. At the same time, critics argue that mid-cycle regulatory shifts, they undermine investor expectations. The deeper issue here may not be the scandal, it may be the architecture. Most African clean cooking companies, they cap carbon revenue at 10 to 25%. They build margins into fuel, they diversify revenue streams, and they secure B2B contracts. KOKO scaled infrastructure fast with heavy carbon dependency. When authorization stalled, the revenue engine stopped instantly. Now, what does this mean? It means 1.5 million households, they may revert to charcoal. It also means that environmental gains, they risk reversal. And also, investor confidence in East African carbon markets is shaken. And Kenya now sits in a complicated space between climate sovereignty and investor protection. KOKO proved that clean cooking can scale to over 1 million urban households. It also proved that if 90% of your business depends on regulatory carbon export approvals, that approval is existential. So you can see that KOKO collapsed because of authorization. Yes, and that's it on KOKO, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Talk to me in the comments if there's anything that I have missed, if there's anything in particular you want me to talk about, especially on KOKO. Just talk to me. I'm trying to get a few CEO friends. Feels good to say that. Oh my God. I'm talking to a few CEO friends of mine to help me also break down KOKO, because as you can see, these startups that come into East Africa from Maju, you know how they end up, and we need to just look at them. Kiundani. Yeah, so I'll ask the friends of mine to help me dissect it, and I'll give you guys the information. This is just Katalina. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching.